Mhm.
And then you guys decided to make your way to China.
No, I escaped actually. So my sister at 16, she escaped first with her friend, and I told you as I got my stomach ache. She left me a note to say, "Go find this lady. She will help you to escape." Initially, I didn't plan to escape with my mom. I was going to escape with my own sister, but because I got sick, my sister had to leave first. I found the note and found the lady with my mom and told her that she told me if I go to China, she said I was going to find my sister.
Right.
And then, I mean, but when you're so desperate, like you don't even know what China is. Like we don't have internet to look search and what's going on in China. Just hoping because China is the only place that had the lights at night.
And if you look at North Korea from a satellite image,
Mm.
it's quite interesting because the entire country is black at night and it's
Mhm.
surrounded by the bright lights of South Korea and all of Southeast Asia. But you have this immense territory, the whole north of Korea, that's completely dark. And you talked about standing with your boyfriend at that time,
Mm.
looking at the lights in the distance
Mhm.
of China, but you didn't know
Mhm.
anything about it at all and had no idea what was going to happen to you if you escaped into China.
No, I did not even know what was China. I just saw the lights, and maybe if I go where the lights were, I thought maybe would find a bottle of rice. That's how innocently we thought about it. And
Right, and some of
we,
that motivation was direct hunger, right? You were
of
hoping
course,
to find somewhere where you could at least get enough to eat.
yeah, it was. That's the thing. It's a thing. When people say you're so brave that you risk your life for freedom, like no, I wasn't. I didn't even know what freedom was then. Like, how do I know what freedom is? Like I just was literally escaping to find some food to survive from hunger. And that's how we crossed that frozen river that night with my mother and myself when I was 13 years old to China, leaving my father behind back in North Korea.
So tell us what happened. Tell us about what happens to North Koreans as they move with the traffickers into Korea, because that's a whole story in and of itself. And it was something you had no idea about.
I know this is a thing, like people, the world is obsessed talking about slavery, but this is a slavery that happening just right now at this very moment that we are talking about this. So there are like 300,000 North Korean defectors are in China, and they are all enslaved by Chinese people. I was one of them. In 2007, we found this lady. Miraculously, she wanted to help me to go to China. I didn't even know why. She bribed the guards. So in North Korea, it's the most heavily guarded border with the people with the machine guns. And Kim Jong-un literally buries landmines on the border, so people would not escape. So entire country is a concentration camp. Entire border is sealed. We were luckily bribe the guards. We crossed the frozen river to China. And of course, the first thing I see was my mom being raped in front of me. And
And you said
from,
that your mother offered herself as an alternative to you,
yeah.
and you
So,
were 13 at the time. And that was your first introduction to sex of any sort, because there was no sexual education or contact for young people. There was no sexual education and no romance, no dating, anything like that. So that was your first introduction. I don't imagine you even understood what was happening.
no, that's the thing. Like, I go there and I was like something 60 pounds. I was very manly, maybe 50 something, but so small. And this man was like, I want to have sex with her. And my mom's like, what do you mean? Like, she's only child. And then he's like, I want to have sex with her. So it's like, just take me instead. And he was raping her in front of me. But I'm like, I just never seen a sex video ever, never even knew what rape was. That word was not even in my head. I just seeing something so horrible that I didn't want to see. And after that, they took us to this house where they would like literally make us stand up, make us turn around, take our teeth and everything, and making price on our body.
Yeah, now let me fill in a bit of background there. So the way you lay that out in your autobiography is that there's a heavy demand for North Korean women in China,
Mhm.
especially rural China. And
Mhm.
the fundamental reason for that, apart from desire for labor, is that China instituted a one-child policy back in the 60s, and many female fetuses were more aborted than male. So there's a disproportionate number of young Chinese men who have no partner and no probability of acquiring one because there's an absolute shortage of women. And so you and your mother were valuable commodities because of the shortage of women.
Exactly.
Yes,
So
I've
as
got
you
that right.
said,
And there was a price on you both had a high value.
yeah.
And so that's when you entered what was essentially the world of slavery.
Mm-hmm. It's as you said, right now in China, literally 30 million young men has no hope of finding women in their life. 30 million men in China right now. So because of the regime, Chinese regime do not want these men to revolt even because of dissatisfaction with their lifestyle. In a way, Chinese regime does not cracking down on this human right trafficking either. We are almost like the price they are using to pay for this men not to revolt. And then, so when we go, I was 13 years old, I was a virgin. So my price would be less than $300 in 2007. And my mom's price was less than $100. That's how little a human being worth right now in this 21st century. And then each trafficker buys us, price goes up. So the second trafficker comes and buys us and then pay more price. Then they sell us to the Chinese farmers or the men, or to sell us to brothels or prostitution and like a lot of other like underground work and sell us like products like commodity. And then I remember that's the thing. Like at 13, they were asking, so in China, in order to be here, you gotta be sold. And I didn't even know what human trafficking was. Like, what do you mean you're selling a human? I'm not a puppy. Like, how do you sell me? And they were like, no, you gotta be sold here. And they said like literally to me was that, oh, if you don't want to be sold, you can go back to North Korea. We can let you guys go back. But the thing is, going back to North Korea is a death. Like, even though miraculously regime doesn't punish me, there's no chance for me to find food. I mean, that's the hardest thing. It's like there's no place for us to go outside of North Korea. Like, if we leave that country, whatever the condition is, it's better than being in North Korea because at least in China, we are being fed. Doesn't matter we are raped, tortured, we are at least being fed. And that's how we stayed in China and they sold me separately from my mom because they can charge two people's price. So they sold my mom and sold me separately, and that's how I got separated from all my family at 13.
Yeah, well, you said at the beginning when you went into China that you didn't tell the smugglers, the traffickers, that you were traveling with your mother. You said that she was younger than she was, and you said that you were older than you were.
Exactly.
Because they weren't going to take you otherwise.
Yeah, so the lady...
And you had no idea what was in store for you at that point also.
No, I did not know. She told me, oh, don't tell them you guys are mother and daughters, just say you're maybe aunt or something. And told my mom, you're much younger, you're much older. And because human trafficking was something that I didn't hear about in my life, I was so scared because in North Korea, there's no bad news. Every news is a happy news, how amazing we are winning in the revolution. So I never even knew what rape was. Like in America, if you watch news, like somebody raped, you know what rape is. But in North Korea, they steal every information from you. Like news is not actual news. So not knowing what rape is, not knowing what human trafficking is, and just completely into just another like planet.
But you had enough to eat.
Yeah.
And was that the first time in your life that you'd actually had enough to eat? Were you able to find enough so that you could eat until you were full? Did you experience that at that point?
That's when I learned. Another thing is, it didn't matter that I had food to eat again because I lost everything that mattered to me. Like I lost everything, and so I wanted to kill myself. Like I finally went to the place where there was a food for me, but then that means me being a slave, and I'm losing every single one of them in my life. And I was going to kill myself. And at that point, this broker told me, if you help me become my mistress, help me with my trafficking business, that I'm going to help you with your own family.
Why did you decide to stay alive? What kept you going?
Because my mother, he told me at that point, he said, if I don't kill myself and helping him, then he said he was going to buy my mom, because he's the one who sold my mom to a farmer.
Right. So at that point, you were separated, and your mother was the enslaved wife, so to speak, of a farmer in a rural community.
Yes.
So she had to be bought back, and that's the deal he offered you.
Yes.
And so you decided to stay alive because you thought you could help your mother.
Yeah.
It wasn't for you.
No, I was, yeah, it was my life mattered something, right? It meant something. I could do something more than that. So he offered to bring my father, and that's how I brought my father to China from North Korea. And that October, when I was turning 14, in that October 2007, I saw my father again.
And so then you were with this man, Hong Wei, was that his name? Hong Wei.
Mm-hmm.
And you describe a very complex relationship with him. He was violent and a gambler, so he would spend vast amounts of money raised by this trafficking trade and disperse all of it in gambling fits. And he was violent to you, but you also believed that over time he came to love you. And so what do you make of that in retrospect? It's an unbelievably complicated situation, to say the least.
Even though actually is a thing, last year he came out of prison in China after 10 years serving sentence, and I sent him money from the US to help him. And it was for me to, that's the thing. And then I could actually, this morning I woke up from this nightmare of my time with him, how violent he was. All my day I was like, was hard of like all those nightmares I went through. But the thing is, like, nobody's pure evil. Nobody's pure like anger. I think that's what it is. Like, as much as he was so evil, I'm still haunted by nightmares. He still like saved my parents. He still gave my father's last moment that I can cherish. And I think that's life really. It's not that like simple. Yeah.
So you were with him for how long?
2 years.
And what occurred after that? You went to Mongolia. What was the trek from him? Now, so he bought your mother back, and so you're together living with him, you and your mother?
Yes.
You can't find your sister yet at that point?
No, we couldn't find my sister.
Your father, is he still alive at that point when you're with Hong Wei?
So yes, during the time after finding my mom, he brought my father 6 months later, and then my father died 3 months later after I saw him again.
And you said you had changed dramatically after you left North Korea. You stopped being a child very, very rapidly. And yeah, you started to take care of your mother and to make the decisions. And also when your father saw you, once he came to China, that he could hardly recognize you.
It still affects me. I think that at 13, I don't know what I became. It took so hard for me to fear something again. Like when I had my own son, actually in 2018, when I met you at the lecture, that is the year when I for the first time felt something. And like I was so grateful that I was feeling things ever again. And so at 13, I learned how not to fear ever. And I don't know how it was possible even. So my father came and then he died. So I buried his ashes in the middle of the mountain. And after that, Hong was like, he blew all his money from gambling. He couldn't even have.
You said when your father did come, though, you did revert to being a child from time to time, that you would sit on his lap and that you would turn back into a younger child. and then go back into whoever you had become when you went to China.
Yeah, I think there were many versions of me back then to survive. Whatever the version that was fitting me to survive, I think I became that person. It just, it was so complex. I don't even know like who was am I, which person was am I. Like I became so many persons. I still think I just don't even know how that was possible. Some because my father before he died, like he was keep telling me about his childhood, and and I think he just really missed me being a child, and I think something may brought that out of me. So, so my father is very hard thing for me to still deal with, but so he died, and then Hongwei couldn't afford to have us. He couldn't even able to buy us even food in China. That's really bad. He couldn't even able to feed us. So he was saying, okay, I'm not gonna let you go. Then how do we go? Where do we go? Even though
Your mother at that point, she was insisting that you sell her again, if I remember correctly.
yeah, I did sell my mom because I couldn't feed her. She was saying only way for me to feed in China was being sold again. So I sold my own mom and then gave the money to Hongwei, and then he put us in a one night gambling. So a few months later, I brought my mom, make her to run away from the farmer that I sold her. And then we luckily found a North Korean lady who operates in a chat room. I don't know you know this. They bring these girls, so it was better than brothel. That's the thing. I had the option of going to prostitution or going to a chat room at 14, and I thought it's much better than being touched by men physically than going to a chat room.
Well, you said that with Hong Wei that that was your introduction to sex essentially, and that it was catastrophic for you, and so well, and then you after Hong Wei could no longer afford to feed everyone. That's when you entered the chat rooms, and you were working in the chat rooms for how long?
Maybe over half a year, maybe less than a year. I think so, like maybe 8 months or 9 month time.
And
So
the people that organized the chat rooms took the vast proportion of the money.
yes, all the money.
I think you got $1 out of 7. It was something like that.
Something like, but even that dollar we had to buy food and clothes and other things. So, but the thing is, still was better deal than going into prostitution. And in that chat room, we met another North Korean fellow defector, and then she told me there was way out of all this, which means going to South Korea. And then they say, I told them, what do you mean South Korea? I thought South Korea was colonized by America. It's like the horrible, horrible capitalistic corrupt country. And she was like, no, South Korea is free. And that is, I remember still the time I learned the word free that day. I was asking her, what do you mean I'm gonna be free in South Korea? And she, of course, did not know freedom meant freedom of speech or none of that. She literally told me, oh, in South Korea, you can wear jeans and you can watch TV and no one gonna be arresting you for that. And that's how we conceived the freedom as North Koreans. Like freedom meant wearing jeans. So I asked her, then how do I do that? And then she was saying, oh, then we gotta become Christians. There were Christian like operation in China. If we become Christians, they were going to help us. And it was ironic for me, or why? Because I couldn't believe, like, why do we have to keep believing something to survive? In North Korea, we had to believe in Kims. But now, suddenly outside North Korea, we had to believe in God to survive. But the thing is, we are so desperate. Like, literally, if somebody took me or brought me like a rock, asked me to believe in rock, I would have believed. That is like how strong our humans are to survive.
And
It was
the
like
Christians that you became associated with in China, were those Chinese Christians or were they missionaries from Western countries?
both. There were
Both.
some of them from South Korea and some of them from China. And they would have these houses that make us to study Bible. And if we prove our faith to them, they then help us to go to South Korea. And that was a deal that we become Christians and they were going to help us. So at 15, I became a Christian. They made us to go fasting. I mean, like we were like managed all our life, but they said God can do more than that. So they go us like fasting with a 3 years old child in our group, a toddler. We go fasting and make us memorize Bible verses, and they come check us like if we memorize it or not.
How do you view that interaction with the Christians in China in retrospect? Was there any of that that was useful, or was it just another belief that you had to adopt to survive?
So truly, honestly, Dr. Peterson, until I read your book, 12 Rules for Life, I was atheist. I was so against religion because right now I'm with Christians at 15 studying Bible, and then they found out about what I did to survive in China, and
The chat
then
rooms.
yes, and I remember the pastor was saying, "You're so dirty, like it can never be washed," and he literally like some Corinthians, some verse telling me that how some sins can never be washed and how I was so dirty for doing what I did to survive. And that was actually a lot harder in some ways to going through all that journey, because when I was at least going through it, I didn't think that was a bad thing. I thought like something you have to do to survive. Because my father always told me life was a gift. You have to fight for it no matter what, how hard it is. You should never give up on like life. And and then I'm suddenly now with this missionary telling me what I did was wrong. I should have like died instead of doing something that dirty to survive. So it was very tough to deal with. Like, keep thinking for the rest of my life, was it worth it? Should I
Well, but
have done
also
it?
you were at that point too. You said that the reason that you didn't kill yourself was because you wanted to help your mother. You had other people that were dependent on you. It wasn't just you.
Mhm.
And you were still looking for your sister too. You had no idea what had happened to her at that point.
Yeah, I didn't. So yeah, and but the thing is now what I'm thinking of that no matter what he was better than those people talking about inclusion, all of that, because he risked his life to saving lives. Those pastors, those missions who sent to prison for lifetime sentence in China. No matter what people saying, like you gotta see their actions. And these people actually cared about humanity than anybody that I met having all this flowery, loving language they are using. So that's the thing, like it's so hard to understand humanity that even though it hurt me so long, I'm like forever grateful for what he did for us. And namelessly, I'm like, I made a name for myself. If I'm dying, people gonna know, but he never did. And he didn't even tell me his name. If you asked him, like, tell us your name so we can at least thank you afterwards, like, no, it's not, I'm doing this for making a name. I'm doing this because of love. Love for Jesus, that he loved us. That's why I'm loving you guys as much. So in a way that he was the only person who showed me with the actions that humans can love another, that like unconditionally. So it's just very complex.